So today what we will do, we'll discuss about the statement of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and also the importance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom by applying Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay. Now what is the statement of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Look here, it states the following. Okay, this is a statement. What is the statement? Yeah. So what is the statement of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? It states that the product of uncertainties in the simultaneous measurement of both the position and momentum of a subatomic particle is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. Okay. Now what is the statement of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Look here, whenever we are trying to locate or whenever we are trying to measure both the position and the, say, velocity of an electron at the same time. Okay, look here, momentum is related to velocity because why? Momentum is mass into velocity. Then what is de Broglie wavelength? Lambda is equal to h by p. So therefore, whenever we are trying to measure the the location and the velocity of a very small particles such as electron, proton, neutron, lepton, whose sizes are very small. Okay, we call them as what? Subatomic particle. Subatomic particle means what? They are part of an atom. Okay, so whenever you try to measure at the same time both the position and the velocity or momentum of an electron, then we run into the following difficulty. And that difficulty is called as what? Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay. So what is the statement of Heisenberg uncertainty principle? The statement of Heisenberg uncertainty principle is, in any simultaneous measurement of both the position and the momentum of a particle, the product of the corresponding uncertainties is constant, or the product of that uncertainty is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. Okay. Now look here, if two quantities are such that, for example, if I call two quantities, say A and B, whose product is a constant. Now what you can tell? See, if I have two quantities such that their product AB is equal to a constant, for example, if it is 5. Okay. What does that mean? If A is high, B has to be low, because B is equal to 5 by A. So if A increases, B should decrease, or if B increases, A should decrease. Correct, right? Likewise, so if you have two quantities whose product happens to be a constant, then if one increases, the other has to decrease, so that this equation is valid. Okay. Likewise, so when you are trying to measure the position and velocity or position and momentum of an electron, then we have the following things. Okay, look here. Here we denote delta x as what? Delta x is denoted as the uncertainty in the location of an electron. And what is delta p? Delta p is defined as the uncertainty in the location of uncertainty in the momentum of an electron. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that if you are trying to measure both the position, say denoted by x, and the momentum denoted by p, if you are trying to measure both position and momentum at the same time for an electron or proton, then we have what you have is, it says that the product of the corresponding uncertainties in location and momentum, that product is a constant. That product is a constant means what? It is given as h by 4 pi. H divided by 4 pi. Okay. So what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is, in any simultaneous measurement of both position and momentum of an electron, the product of the corresponding uncertainties is going to be a constant. So it can be h by 4 pi, or it can be h by 4 pi plus 1. So it is going to be any quantity which is a constant. Okay, now what is the consequence of that? The consequence of this is just 5 minutes before I told, no, if you have two quantities such that their product happens to be a constant, what does that mean? What does that mean is, if A increases, B has to decrease. Okay, because B is equal to 5 by A, right? Likewise, if you apply this logic here, what you conclude, if delta X is large, delta P has to be small. Or if delta P is small, delta X has to be large. Why? It is because this product is a constant. Okay. Now, why we actually run into this problem? That is, for an electron, if you know its location, you will not know where it is going to go ahead. Because velocity tells you where it is going to move next. Or if you know where it is going to move next, you will not know where it is located in the first place. Now, why we have this difficulty with respect to making, and when you're trying to track an electron, motion of an electron or proton, this is because of it is a consequence, or it is a manifestation, or it is the result of what you call wave particle dualism. Okay, see, when a particle is in motion, it will have waves associated with it. So because of that wave nature and also the particle nature, we run into this difficulty. So therefore, to understand things in a much better way, I will give the following two examples. Okay, look here. I will consider two cases. In the first case, where the de Broglie wavelength is very small, and in the second case, where the de Broglie wavelength is very large. Okay, so therefore, let me draw that. Let me draw that case here. I close it. Yeah. Look here. This is case 1. The first case, what I will do, I will consider a de Broglie wave. I'll consider a de Broglie wave which is defined over a very small distance. What is the matter wave? It's an amplitude modulated wave. Okay. So suppose I call it as lambda 1. Lambda 1 is this distance. Okay. Right. Now question is, where is the electron located? Electron is located anywhere within this region. Electron is located anywhere within this region. Okay, where is the electron located? Electron is located anywhere within this region. Therefore, X will lie between 0 and lambda 1. Where is electron located? Electron is located anywhere within this region. Okay. Next, I'll consider case 2. Okay. In the second case, I'll consider an instance where the matter wave is spread over a large region in space. It is spread over a large region in space, and I may call this distance as lambda 2. Okay, suppose I call this as lambda 2. Okay. Now, where is the electron located? So, electron is located anywhere within this region. Okay, where is electron located? Electron is located anywhere between 0 to lambda 1. 0 to lambda 1. Okay. Now it is like this. Now look here. So I am considering two cases. Case 1 is in which the de Broglie wavelength is confined over a very small region in the space. And the second case is where the de Broglie wavelength is spread over a large region in space. Now look here. So for example, lambda can be say 100 times lambda 1. The second wave might have spread over distance which is 100 times that of lambda 1. Okay. Now look here. In which of these instances it is easy for us to locate the particle? Is it the first case or it is the second case? Which case it is easy for us to locate the particle? Is it in the first case or it is in the second case?
Second case.
Second case it's easy to locate, or first case it is easy to locate?
Second case.
Second case, is it easy to locate? Okay, I think I'll give the following idea. Okay, look here. See, for example, say you are playing with a cricket ball, okay, tennis ball, and you have dropped your tennis ball within, say, within your room, okay, and you want to search the whole place and trace it, okay. So if your ball is not found in your room, can you trace it by searching? Answer is yes. Okay, correct. So if the de Broglie wavelength is very small, then it is easy for us to locate where the particle is. It is easy for us to locate where the particle is. Okay. On the other hand, now I'll take the same tennis ball. Okay. Then go in an helicopter, drop it somewhere randomly, and now I will ask you to find where is the tennis ball in entire say in entire Karnataka state. Which case it is easy for you to finding the ball within your home, or finding the ball by searching the entire Karnataka state. Which one is easier?
In a house.
Which one is easier? Searching in your home is easier,
At
or
home, sir.
Our home, sir.
or searching over entire Karnataka is easier?
At home, sir.
Searching your home, correct? No, that is what this precisely is. Okay, so if the de Broglie wavelength is spread over, see, if the de Broglie wavelength is very small, then it is easy for us to locate the particle. But in this case, what happens? It is harder for us to locate the particle. Okay, for example, here you are trying to trace an electron or tennis ball within your home, but here you are trying to see it over the entire Karnataka, which is harder. Okay, therefore this we can put in this, this part we can put in a space called X space and P space. Okay, look here. So suppose I write this as X space, simply as X, and this as P. P means momentum space. Okay, now look here. The first case, what happens? It is easy for me to locate where the electron is, because the de Broglie, the wave is confined over a small region. Therefore, this I will write it as what? It is easy for us to find. Therefore, it is like this. Don't worry too much about this. The second case, what happens? It is harder for us to find. Therefore, I will write this as uncertainty is more. Okay? Here uncertainty is less. Here the uncertainty is more. Okay? People are able to understand me as of now? People are able to understand me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
De Broglie wavelength is
Yes,
over
sir.
a small region. It is easy for us to spot the particle. If the matter wave is spread over a large region, it is harder for us to find where it is located. Okay, it's not impossible, but it is harder. Okay, as lambda increases, the level of difficulty or tracing will become difficult. Okay, now if I ask you to trace the ball in all over India, it is still harder. If I ask you to find it in the entire Pacific Ocean, it is still harder. Correct? No, right? So I think this part is clear. So if the matter wave is confined over a small region, it is easy for us to locate the particle. Okay. Next. Now let us come to the wave characteristics. Now look here, how is wave characteristics related? Look here, you know that according to de Broglie's hypothesis, the wavelength of the matter wave is given by lambda is equal to h divided by p. So therefore, if momentum is known accurately, wavelength is known. Or if you know lambda, momentum is known. Okay, now understand this. So now the thing is, we can measure the wavelength of an wave only when it is spread over a large region in space. Okay, got my point? Once again I will repeat to you all. Okay, look here, the tsunami warning system will work efficiently or effectively only when the warning comes from several places at the same time. Okay, only in some place it comes and then in all other places the warning is 0. No, you can't detect. Okay. Likewise, to measure the wavelength of a wave, we want the wave to be spread over a large distance. Okay. So what does that boils down to? What does it boils down to is, so look here, it is, you can know the wavelength of the matter wave. You can know the wavelength of the matter wave more easily in the second case because it is spread over a large distance. In the first case, it is difficult for us to know the matter wave. Sorry, it is difficult for us to know the wavelength. Okay. Therefore, what does this translate to in P space? Look here, in P space. Look here, this is P space. This is P space. Okay. In momentum space, for the second case, it is easy for us to locate the wavelength. But for the first case, it is harder for us to locate the momentum. Okay. Can you see here? If delta x is small, delta p is large. If delta p is small, delta x is large. Okay. This much is clear. This we call it as what? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So in the first case, it is easy for us to locate the particle, and in the second case, it is harder for us to locate the particle. On the other hand, in the second case, it is easy for us to know the momentum or the wavelength of the wave because it is spread over a large distance, but you cannot know its momentum in the first case. Sorry, for the first case. This, we call it as what? Wave particle dualism. We call this as what? Wave particle dualism or Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay, all of you agree with me? All of you are fine with me as of now? People are fine?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Okay, great. Okay, look here. You must have heard one story from Panchatantra. Okay, so there was a forest. In the forest, there were two animals. So, fox and the crane. So, they became very good friends. Okay, one day what happened? Say, the fox invited the crane to have the supper at its home. Okay, so next, what did the fox do? The fox made, say, Maggi noodles. And how did it serve? In the fox's home, it served the Maggi noodles using two very flat plates. Okay, it started serving Maggi noodles using two flat plates. This time what happened? At that time what happened? The fox was able to have the supper, but not the crane. Okay, now what happened? The crane got frustrated. So, as a tit for a tat, what did the crane do? The crane invited, in the second trial, the crane invited the fox to have the supper at its home. Now, what did the crane do? The crane also prepared Maggi noodles, and it started serving using two long bottleneck container. Okay, so in this case, what happened? The crane was able to have the supper, but not the fox. Correct? No. So therefore, whether you look at trial 1 or trial 2, so in fox's home, only fox was able to have the supper, but not the crane. And in crane's home, only crane was able to have the supper, but not the fox. This you call it as what? Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay, and this is a consequence of wave particle dualism. Okay, got my point? Okay, now I think we'll look at what are the other forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The other forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle are here. So what are the other forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? The other forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle are, one is you have momentum, position and linear momentum. So out of these two, you can measure only one accurately at the same time. Likewise, you have angular momentum and angular displacement. Okay, they will form a conjugate pair. Likewise, energy and the relaxation time of an excited state. So these two will be in conjugate pairs to each other. Okay, if you know the energy of the spectral line, you will not know the lifetime of the excited state. If you know the lifetime of the excited state, you will not know the energy of the spectral line. So therefore, these two are the other forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So how many forms of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle are there? 3. The first one being position and momentum. These are in conjugate pair with each other. Likewise, you have angular momentum and angular displacement. The third one is energy and relaxation time of a process. These are in harmonic conjugate with each other. Okay. So with this, now we'll look at what is the physical significance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay. Now what is the physical significance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Okay, I think people can see here. Yeah. So what is the importance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? You should never think of the exact value of the position of an electron or the exact value of the momentum of a particle. Instead, one should think of the probability of finding the electron at a certain region in space, or you call it this as what? The most probable value for momentum or energy of a particle or the velocity of a particle. Okay, so and how do you estimate such probabilities? The estimation of such probabilities are made by means of certain functions called probability density functions in quantum mechanics. Okay, so look here. I think people are able to understand what I'm trying to tell. Okay, look here. See, for example, if you look at, say, performance of Yuvraj Singh, cricketer. Okay, he's a very good one-day international specialist. Okay, so can you tell in a given match, Yuvraj Singh is going to hit exactly 100 runs, or he's going to hit exactly 135 runs? No. Okay, you can never talk about the importance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is you can never talk about the exact location of an electron or the exact value of the energy or anything that you're trying to measure. All you can tell is what? There is a greater chance of Yuvraj Singh hitting a century or a lesser chance of hitting a century. Okay, so nowhere you can talk about exact value of momentum or exact number of runs scored by batsmen. All you can tell is depending on their past performance, the chances of getting another century or another double century is bright or low. So that you call it as what? Probabilistic approach. Okay, therefore in quantum mechanics, as per Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, whatever values you come up is going to be what? They are going to be probable, most probable values. Okay, so I think this is done. Okay, next what we will do, now we will focus on Heisenberg's uncertainty principle to show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, so next we will focus on the application of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay, so what is our next goal? Our next goal is, by applying Heisenberg uncertainty principle, we will have to show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, so next what we are going to show, by applying Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, we'll have to show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, and this, how are we going to do it? Look here. Before that, there is one small background you have to understand. Look here, there were one important theory. Okay, later on only Bohr came up with an idea of the orbits of the electron being stable and so on. Okay, so look here, there was one theory. I think this must have been proposed by Rutherford. Okay, look here, you know that this is the nucleus. Nucleus of an atom has proton and neutron. So neutron, proton and neutron are located at the center of the nucleus, which you call it as the nucleus, right? What will happen to the electron? Electron will be revolving around the nucleus. Okay, so there was one theory, mostly by, I think this must have been put forth by Rutherford. Okay, according to that, what happens is, as the electron is moving around the nucleus, what will happen is it will start losing its kinetic energy. So as a consequence of that, what will happen? The radius of the circular path will keep decreasing. Eventually what will happen? The electron will spiral and eventually it will come and fall on the nucleus. So if an electron happens to be inside a nucleus, what will happen? You have proton and electron. So proton is positively charged and electron is negatively charged. So if electron and proton, if they come in close contact with each other, what will happen? It will lead to mass destruction or annihilation of matter or destruction of atoms. Okay, but you see that in the whole universe, the atoms are stable. So for the atoms to be stable, if atoms are stable, the whole universe is also stable. So for the, can you see, as per Rutherford theory, electron will spiral and eventually it will fall inside the nucleus, but that does not happen because the whole universe is stable. Therefore, for this to happen, electron must be revolving around the nucleus over those orbits which you call it as stable orbit. So if electron continues to revolve around the nucleus, then the whole universe is stable. Therefore, how is this accounted for? Likewise, using Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, if you show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom, so we are actually supporting the fact that the whole universe is stable. Okay, or there is no annihilation or destruction occurring in the universe. Okay, got my point? Therefore, how we are going to show this? The approach is the following. Okay, I think I will tell these steps and then we will work it out. So in another 15 minutes, this will come to an end. Okay, if I write, for example, X, Y, Z. Okay, see, for example, if I zoom, yes. Now people are able to see the text that I am trying to type. It's visible, right? People can see.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Visible, no. I'll
Yes,
zoom
sir.
it and increase the font size. I think this should be fine. Correct? People are able to see.
Yes, sir.
You know? Okay, great. Okay. Now, how are we going to do it? Okay. So this is the flow chart or this is the algorithm. Okay. First, in step 1, what we do by knowing, so what we do is we will approach this problem as analogous to proof by contradiction. Okay. So first what we do is I'll tell the step, then I will work it out and then we will understand. Okay, look here. In first step, what we do, we assume that an electron is present inside the nucleus. You will find the uncertainty in the location of an electron. So uncertainty in the location of an electron, we denote it as delta X. I cannot write a triangle and X, therefore I'll just write it as delta X. Okay, what is delta X? Delta X is the uncertainty in the location of an electron if it were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, this is step 1. In second step, what we are going to do, by using Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, find the uncertainty in its momentum. Find uncertainty in its momentum. So I'll write the uncertainty momentum as delta P. Okay. Next, what we have to do is, what is kinetic and what is energy of an electron? Electron will always be in motion. Therefore, its kinetic energy is going to be P square by 2m. So find the energy of an electron if it were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom. Next step, what we do, we compare this value of energy with the experimental value to arrive at a conclusion. Okay, what my point? So how we are going to do it? Okay, look here. This is analogous to what you call proof by contradiction. In proof by contradiction, what we do? So you assume something to be true in the first place. For example, you want to prove that root 2 is irrational. You will assume something else. Say the opposite. Say root 2 is rational. Okay. Next, what you will do, we'll write root 2 as equal to P by Q, then we will square, blah, 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 we'll do all this. So in proof by contradiction, what you do is, you assume something to be true and you carry out your analysis. At some stage of your analysis, you will find a result which is going to be quite opposite to what you have assumed, or which is going to be contradicting what you have assumed. Look here, now your analysis is correct. Your steps of analysis is correct. But still, you got a result which is contradicting. So therefore, where is the bug? Bug lies in your initial data or in your initial assumption. Likewise, so what we do is, we assume that an electron is present inside the nucleus of an atom. So based on that, you will find its energy if it were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom. You will compare this value of energy with the experimental value. If the value that we arrived, if it matches with the experimental value, you conclude that yes, electron is present inside the nucleus. If this value does not match with the experimental value, then we conclude that electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, that's how we do it. Okay, therefore, I think now we'll move on to this derivation. Look here. So what we do? Step 1, find the uncertainty in the location of an electron if it were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom. That is step 1. And in step 2, by using Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, find delta P. Next, once delta P is known, find the energy of an electron if it were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom. Then compare this value of energy that you got with the experimental value to arrive at a conclusion. Therefore, now let us look this. Okay, look here. I'll remove this, show that, yeah. Look here. Now, I'll assume that the nucleus is in the form of a sphere. Okay, for simplicity, let us consider that the shape of the nucleus is a sphere. Okay, and what is this? This is the diameter of the nucleus. Now look here. See, suppose Supposing the electron was present here in this location. What is this distance? This distance will always be less than the diameter of the nucleus. It's always less than the diameter of the nucleus. Okay. Likewise, if the electron is present, say somewhere here, what is this distance measured from the center? It will always be less than the diameter of the nucleus. Correct? No, this is diameter. Right? Suppose the electron is present here. This distance is obviously less than the diameter of the nucleus. Therefore, what does that mean is, an electron were to be present anywhere within the nucleus, then its uncertainty in location cannot exceed the diameter of the nucleus. Okay? Wherever an electron may be present inside the nucleus of an atom, its uncertainty in location cannot exceed the diameter of the nucleus. Okay? Diameter of the nucleus. Therefore, what is step 1? If an electron is present inside the nucleus of an atom, its location has to be within the diameter of the nucleus. Therefore, this is step 1. Okay? So, in step 1, what you do? Look here. If an electron were to be present inside the nucleus of an atom, okay, yeah, people can see. See, if an electron were present inside the nucleus of an atom, then the uncertainty in the location of an electron cannot exceed the diameter of the nucleus. Now look here, from nuclear physics, we know what is you can measure the size of the nucleus. The size of the nucleus is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 14 meters. Okay. What is the diameter of the nucleus? Diameter of the nucleus is of the order of 10 power minus 14 meters. 10 power minus 14. 10 power minus 14 meters. 14 meters. Not 10 power minus 4. It is 10 power 14. Minus 14. Okay. Therefore, this will complete step 1. What is step 1? Step 1 is find the uncertainty in the location of the electron. Uncertainty in the location of an electron is delta x. This is known. Next, what we do? We apply Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and find what is its uncertainty in its momentum is. Okay. Now, what is Heisenberg uncertainty principle? Look here. By Heisenberg uncertainty principle, what we have? Look here. Yeah, if I go before. See, look here. By Heisenberg uncertainty principle, what we have? By Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you know that delta x into delta p. You know that delta x into delta p, this product is a constant which is h by 4 pi. Okay. Now look here, delta x is known here. Therefore, I want to find what is delta p. Therefore, to find delta p, what I have to do? To find delta p, this delta x should come in the denominator on the left side, on the right side. Okay. To find delta p, what I have to do? Shift this delta x on the left side in the denominator. Sorry, on the right side in the denominator. Okay. So if we do this, what you get? We will get delta p. This is going to be given by h divided by 4 pi into delta x. Into delta x. Okay. Now look here. The value of Planck's constant is known, which is 6.6 into 10 power minus 34 joule second. Pi is 3.14. Delta x is around 10 power minus 14 meter. Therefore, if I plug in all these values, you can find delta p. That is what is precisely done here. Okay. So, what is delta p? Plug in all those values. You will get the uncertainty in the location of an electron. This is given by what? Uncertainty in the location delta p. So, all these values are plugged in here. all these values are plugged in here. H is 6.625 into 10 power minus 34 joule second. Pi is 3.14 into 10 power minus, 3.14. Then delta X is 10 power minus 14. And if we simplify this, what will this value come out to be? This value will come out to be very close to 5.275 into 5.275 into 10 power minus 21 kg meter per second. And we say that this delta X is equal to P. What is this P? Okay, now look here, it is like this. See, if Tendulkar has to hit a century, can 100th run occur within 1 over? No. So if Tendulkar has to hit a century, first of all, he has to cross 30 run mark. Next, he has to cross 50 run mark. That is, he should score an half century. Next, he has to cross 80 run mark. Then he has to cross 90 run mark. And then the 100th run mark. Correct? No. Likewise. So we tell that the actual value of momentum is as close as delta P. Okay. So we consider that. Look here. What does this tell? What does this imply? This implies that if Tendulkar has to score a century, he has to cross 25 runs mark. If he has to hit a century, he has to cross 25 run mark. Okay. So therefore, we consider that P is greater than actual value of momentum is greater than or equal to the uncertainty in the momentum of the electron. Okay. With this in mind, next what we do, I will find what is the energy of an electron. Now, what is the energy of the electron given by? It is half mv square, which is equal to p square by 2m. So this is the energy of an electron. This is the kinetic energy of an electron. Now, what we do? Put this value of momentum. Here. Mass of the electron is known, which is 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 kg. So therefore, this value can be evaluated. Okay. Therefore, this if we do, so put those values, that will come out to be this. Okay. Can you see here? Okay. Can you see here? So if I plug in all these values along with the mass of an electron, then what is this value going to be? This will work out to be around 1.372 into 10 power minus 11 joules. This if we convert it to electron volts, this value will come out to be very close to 85 mega electron volts. Okay, therefore from this what did we do? So in step 3, find the kinetic energy of an electron. So the kinetic energy of the electron when expressed in electron volts, this comes out to be very close to 85 mega electron volts. And in step 4 what we do? You compare this value of energy with the experimental value to arrive at a conclusion. Okay. Now look here. See, we all know that heavier nucleus such as uranium, thorium, plutonium, carbon-13, they all will decay by emitting beta particles, gamma rays, alpha particles and so on. Okay. So when the beta particles that were emitted from the nucleus of these radioactive elements, so when that was coming out, right, beta particles are nothing but what? They are electrons. So the beta particles that are coming out, that are ejected out from the nucleus of an atom, they had kinetic energies in the range of 3 to 4 mega electron volts. And the value that we obtained was how much? 85 mega electron volts. So can you see here? During beta decay, the okay, can you see during beta decay, the maximum kinetic energy of beta particles emitted from the nucleus, they have kinetic energy in the range of 3 to 4 mega electron volts. Since 85 is quite big when compared to 4. Okay, for example, 85 is roughly 21 times 4. So by this you conclude that electrons cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, so therefore, so when you compare this with the experimental value, since 85 mega electron volts is very high when compared to 4 mega electron volts, so our initial assumption that electron resides inside the nucleus of an atom, that is wrong. Okay, so therefore this is about the application of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle to show that an electron cannot exist inside the nucleus of an atom. Okay, I think I'll stop here. The next class we'll move on to deriving the Schrodinger's wave equation.